So in this video, I want to talk to you about people pleasing, what it is, where it comes from, how it looks in our relationships, and what to do about it, how to start healing from this pattern. Hi, I'm Renata Gomide, your healthy relationship expert and certified clinical hypnotherapist. And today we'll talk about how to stop people pleasing. So people pleasing is a subconscious pattern that we start developing as a response to trauma or neglect in our childhood. And this kind of coping mechanism that we create is there basically to keep us safe. Also, people-pleasing behaviors are very connected to self-worth, or let's say the lack of self-worth. And again, this is something that we develop when we are raised in families, environments where perhaps we felt like a burden, or where our emotional needs were absolutely ignored, and that's probably majority of us, right? And also to do with lack of healthy boundaries and how it was sort of modeled to us when we were little. Because let's remember, we don't really have as children that ability to critically assess or logically look at these kind of dynamics in a family. We just absorb them, whatever is modeled to us, and we also internalize it as feelings. And the feelings that we internalize is that we are not worthy, that we don't deserve something, that we must work for love, we must somehow behave in a way that we get that approval that is absolutely necessary for our survival. So this becomes like an internalized feeling of not being worthy and not being good enough. So when we experience this kind of dynamic in our childhood, we as an adult continue subconsciously to strive for that approval by pleasing others, because we want to feel good about ourselves. And the only way that we know how to do it is by making sure that other people's needs are met, and making sure that somehow they praise us if we do something. So it is, again, a very subconscious behavior, because if we actually look at it from a side, we see that by doing this, we overstep our own needs and we betray ourselves. And that's another thing that people pleasers always experience, is that sense of being taken advantage of. It's the sense of resentment. It's the sense of, I'm giving you everything and I'm not getting anything back. And that's true, because you aren't giving anything that you need to yourself. And instead you are trying to get that good feeling from someone else. But let me tell you this, if you are giving that power to someone else to whether, praise you or somehow criticize you, you will always depend on that external validation. And as long as you depend on that external validation to feel worthy, to feel deserving, to feel good about yourself, you will be such an easy thing to manipulate. So let me give you a couple of examples of what people pleasing looks like in relationships. and you can see if that sort of resonates and you can recognize it in your own behavior. And it's also important to say that it's not just about one-on-one relationships or family relationships, friendships, whatever. It goes way beyond it. It goes into our society, that people-pleasing dynamic is seen as some kind of, selfless act, and it's being celebrated, when in fact it's a brutal self-betrayal, which is so damaging, so painful, and is causing all kind of issues in your personal life and in a collective society of humans. So number one example that is so common, and I see that all over the place, is people saying yes to something where they really want to say no. It goes really against all their being, but they are still saying yes out of fear. Also, people pleasers often suffer from this paralyzing fear of conflict and not being able to actually healthily express their negative emotions. Another indication is overgiving yourself. So whether with your time or some kind of help that you provide for other people, friends or family, even when you don't have time for yourself, you don't have time to do what you need to do, but again, you just can't say no. And even if you get that courage to say no, you will have to over-explain why, or over-apologize for not being able to do it, instead of just simply saying, that doesn't work for me, or I'm not available for that. Lack of self-trust is also very common in people-pleasing dynamic. So, for example, you are not stating your opinion when you're talking about some kind of subject, right? You want to accept the opinions of others because, again, there is that fear that you might be rejected if you actually speak your truth. As a people pleaser, you will also have extreme difficulty to be in a situation where somebody is disappointed by you, okay, or your actions or whatever, and they are expressing that disappointment, or they are upset because you placed a boundary, let's say, okay? So this will cause you extreme uncomfort and feelings of guilt, or feelings of, again, that one, not being worthy, not being good enough. And also I want to mention something that not many people talk about in terms of people-pleasing behavior, is actual passive-aggressive behavior is also common in somebody who is running this pattern of people-pleasing, because they are not able to clearly state what their needs are. They are not able to clearly express whatever they need to express. So they go into this passive-aggressive mode where they are trying to express what they want, but it's not very clear. They need to kind of be a little bit covert about it. So in my practice, when I work with clients who are in this deep people-pleasing dynamic in their relationships, we work subconsciously in changing this kind of mental mindset about where your worth comes from. And it is a process that needs to be done subconsciously, because this is where your people-pleasing pattern actually lives. So in this video, obviously, I cannot do that for you. It is an individual inner work. However, I will give you certain truths that hopefully will open a little door to the path of new mindset, a path of new way of seeing this dynamic. So number one truth, your worth doesn't come from external approval. Not from your mommy and daddy, not from your partner, not from anyone. Your sense of worth must come from within you. Number two, your needs are as important as anyone else's needs. And you are not responsible for meeting someone else's needs first, and then, if you have time, if you have energy, if you have some sort of, moment for yourself, you just might meet your own needs. That's not how it works. Because the more you recognize that your needs are also important, the more you learn to try to meet your own needs, or to actually ask directly for what you need from other people, the less resentment you're going to develop in your relationships. Number three truth, very important, and I talk about it all the time, is that healthy relationships always have boundaries and certain limits that will be personal for you. Okay? So a lot of us, because of the traumatic experiences that we all have, we learn to tolerate a lot of shit. But that doesn't mean that we should continue tolerating all kind of hurtful behaviors just because it is a family member, or just because it is a partner or friend, whatever. We must look at ourselves again and see what we are tolerating, what are we allowing into our lives that is making us feel crappy, and how we can place these healthy boundaries in order to create healthier relationships. And one more important thing that is important to shift in our mindsets is that disappointing other people is somehow bad, is somehow wrong. And this is such a childish thing, again, stemming from fear. Although, feelings of disappointment and being upset is a part of life. So learning to deal with that yourself, first of all, will allow you to be more adult and actually realize that you are not responsible for other people's emotional states, especially when they are adults as well. So by reversing this kind of mindset where you are avoiding to disappoint others and you have to please them and you have to kind of minimize and betray yourself, your own values, your own opinions, everything. So you are actually, accepted by them. What does that give you? That acceptance that is not even real. Because by their acceptance is your own betrayal. Does that feel good? Does that feel expansive? No. And let me clarify one thing. When I say that you are not responsible for other people's emotional states, I'm not saying that you need to be an asshole and disregard other people and just become some kind of, rude person. it's not about that. It's recognizing that they have their own history, they have their own triggers, they have their own emotions, and so do you. And once you start taking that responsibility for yourself, you will understand very, very deeply that you cannot be possibly responsible for someone else as well. You are not living their life, you are living yours. And interacting with one another in the best possible way without betraying yourself. So let me give you a couple of steps that you can take in order to start healing from the people-pleasing dynamic. So the first step, and you are actually doing it now by watching this video, is to become aware of this pattern and these kind of behaviors, and to start recognizing how they are playing out in your relationships. Please understand that this pattern, this coping mechanism, you've created because it was necessary for you at that time. It was a smart thing to do when you were a child because it ensured in one way or another your safety. People pleasing is a learned behavior. And if you've learned that when you were really little, you can absolutely unlearn it now that you are an adult. So the second step that I help my clients to take is to start learning meeting your own needs. This stage is practice. This stage requires you to commit to yourself and start taking very small steps. Start meeting very small needs for yourself every single day. Okay, so it's not about the idea that you only need to meet your own needs and you can't rely on anybody else, and all the needs that you have, now you have to start meeting them yourself. This is not how it works. But for a people pleaser, to stop that kind of dynamic, the damaging dynamic, you need to start from small steps and start meeting your own needs where possible. Because understand this, by people pleasing, you are trying to control other people's opinion or perception of you. So where can you start choosing you? Where can you start? And it will be uncomfortable in the beginning. Just to tell you the truth, it will be uncomfortable because, again, those feelings of guilt and shame will come over, and maybe other people will be not so happy about you placing boundaries. It's all a process. It's all brilliant practice to stop abandoning yourself, choosing yourself instead, saying no where you want to say no, without that kind of idea that, oh my God, people will reject me, they will cut me out, they will be upset with me. Third step in stopping people-pleasing dynamic is to actually learn how to set and sustain healthy boundaries in your relationships. And again, it's an uncomfortable step, especially for those who've been running this people-pleasing dynamic since they were children, and now they are in their 30s, 40s, whatever, and just now starting to realize what boundaries are, because again, these boundaries and the concept of boundaries were not taught to you. They were not modeled to you. So it will be uncomfortable and maybe will cause some fear and guilt and all that. because it's like learning a new language. You are introducing something so important that in the beginning, you will have to go through this discomfort to find your authentic voice, to find your authentic needs, and to choose you once again. It is a practice, it takes time, but it does get easier as you go along. And the fourth step that is also important is what I said before, that when you start placing boundaries and you start sort of choosing yourself, some people will be not happy about it because, they are gaining something out of your people-pleasing dynamic or out of your lack of boundaries and things like that. And it will cause you discomfort. And sometimes the discomfort is going to be really great and perhaps even painful. And so learning to deal with these uncomfortable emotions in your own body is a very important step. So instead, what we tend to do when we have these uncomfortable emotions, we tend to avoid and, fall back into that people-pleasing mode because that is more comfortable, right? Even if it down the line causes you resentment and all kind of stuff. So learning to deal with these uncomfortable emotions, to heal them as they come through your body and witness them and don't judge them and allow them to be and allow yourself to process them is such an important step and will give you massive benefits down the line because this will build your own resilience. This will give you chance to really meet yourself, to really witness who you truly are and blossom and expand in that authentic self instead of just being in the shadows of other people. So learning to deal with your emotions, learning to sit with them and allowing your body to actually feel them through and not run away from it. That's, again, not very comfortable in the beginning, but as you do that for yourself, you will reap huge benefits in your future. I hope this information was useful to you, and if so, you know what to do. If you have any questions or comments, don't be shy, leave them below. And if you are someone who is really struggling in this people-pleasing dynamic and you don't seem to be able to work it out yourself, I'll leave a link in the description box below where you can book your free consultation with me, and let's see if we can actually work it out together. Wishing you all the best, and I'll see you soon.